I think this is one of the most highly anticipated sessions of the afternoon, or of the conference itself. It is our Tesla update with Charles Ashe and Josh Oswald. I do not have a bio for Charles. I was told he needed no introduction. But for Josh Oswald, Josh manages the third-party app and ServiceNow delivery teams in central office. In his spare time, Josh enjoys home automation and DIY projects. His most recent project was to install solar panels so that he can charge his Tesla from the sun. With that, Charles Ashe and Josh Oswald.
Thanks. Well, last year I was told I received mixed signals as to whether or not I spoke too long about my car or whether I didn't talk enough. But this year, what we really wanted to tell you is that the cars that we had last year, they don't exist anymore. We bought those cars, they had certain functionality, and they're different now. The cars themselves have had many updates, and so this is a picture of the cars that we had last year. Gone. Like last year when we bought the car, they had navigation systems and they had auto steer, but those two things didn't talk to each other, and now they do talk to each other. So we just thought we'd go through and give you an idea of some of the things that have changed over the last year, and really to describe to you how the automobile industry is about to change. Our cars are more like a mobile device, right? You buy this device and you get changes in functionality through over-the-air updates on a regular basis to change the functionality of this. That's exactly what our cars do now. We get over-the-air updates and that changes what our cars can do. Ford doesn't do that, General Motors doesn't do that yet, but they're about to. So these are the cars this year.
Pay close attention. These are our cars now.
That's what they look like anyway.
Yeah, they may look the same, but they're actually quite different cars. Mostly, or almost entirely, thanks to over-the-air updates. And we think that, and hope that cars that are full of sensors and able to be updated over the air are going to be the future of cars and are likely to change the automobile industry in the same way that the iPhone changed the cell phone industry. So compared to last year, our cars do more things. They do things that they did even better. They're safer than they were. And they're going to continue this trend of improvements and new features. So, and Charles likes to say, think about the last time you bought a car and took it home. That was the most advanced that car was ever going to be. And so the fact that that is changing and now we take our cars home and they get better is pretty amazing. So we're going to talk about some of the things that have changed in the past year. We're going to focus on fixes, features, safety, performance, and some fun stuff. And then we'll talk a little bit about what we think, or what little we know the future is going to hold for these cars. So I mentioned that all the updates are over the air. In the past year, there have been 20 public releases, meaning released to the entire fleet. And for some people who are beta testers, there have been even more. There have been 2 major version releases, from version 8 to version 9, that brought some significant changes both in the functionality and the interface. And right now, they are working on rolling out version 10. And our beta tester actually gets to play with those fun things. I don't have it. It's not fair. And all of these updates, like I said, are over the air, either via cellular or Wi-Fi. And they typically take about 20 to 45 minutes to install. The car has to be parked, obviously, for that to happen. So one of the first things I'll talk about are fixes. Tesla, like any other auto manufacturer, gets things wrong. The difference, however, is that In some cases, instead of needing to recall every car in the fleet to a dealership and be fixed, they can do it over the air. And I'll tell you a little bit about an example here. In May of 2018, Consumer Reports did their test of the Model 3, and they said they were unable to give it the recommended rating due partly to excessive braking distances. They found that it was taking longer to do a hard emergency brake, even longer than a Ford F-150. So that got back to Elon Musk, obviously, and within 10 days, their engineers had identified an issue with the tuning in their ABS system, created a fix, hopefully tested it before they rolled it out to the fleet, and solved that problem. If that had happened to a Ford or a Chevy, we'd be talking about taking your car into the dealership, having them connect to the car and update the software. But this was all done over the air, and the result was that Consumer Reports was able to retest, verify that the braking was now in normal range, and they did give the recommended rating. Some other fixes. So the winter of 2018 was the first time that Model 3 owners, at least in mass, were experiencing their cars in winter weather. And that kind of uncovered some problems that had not been seen in the warmer weather. Sometimes the frameless windows would stick when opening the door. Sometimes the door handles would freeze shut. And there was a lot of cases I actually had where the pin that locks the charging cable in would freeze, and you couldn't get the charging cable out of your car, which makes it difficult to drive. But a lot of those were able to, if not be completely remedied, be improved via over-the-air updates. They changed the amount that the windows would go up or down to reduce the amount of contact with the rubber seal to reduce the freezing. They changed the internal ventilation to get more heat into the doors to try to prevent those handles from freezing. And they changed the amount that the charge lock pin retracts so that it would not get frozen. So those are also some pretty amazing things that they were able to do with an over-the-air update. And although not specifically related to updates, one of the cool factors that this car being customizable was a benefit to me was I turned on 2 settings in the winter to make it a lot easier to drive. There's a setting called chill mode, which reduces the torque when you're accelerating. I've had front-wheel drive or all-wheel drive cars for a lot of years, so relearning how to drive a rear-wheel drive car in the snow took a little bit of relearning, but reducing the torque with that setting made it a lot easier. And the other setting was that I can turn down the amount of regenerative braking that is applied when I let off the accelerator. Both of those things kept me from sliding around so much in the winter and made it a lot easier to drive. So let's talk about some of the major features that were introduced.
Some of the major features that were introduced. Well, I made mention of it a few minutes ago, and that is when we bought the cars, we had a navigation system and we had an autopilot system, but those two things didn't talk to each other. Now they do. So I can say navigate to work, and it will not only map out the course, but it'll actually drive that course. And it will take some exits. It'll take the last exit off of the freeway system, and then it basically says, in 500 feet, you need to take control. So hopefully you're paying attention so that you can take control within 500 feet, because I have been paying attention after it told me that and not did anything. You have to take control. It's going to do this. It's just going to start going all over the place. So, but navigate on autopilot, it'll actually navigate, and if it knows the destination, then it will actually take corrective action for you as well. So I can tell it that I want to go to Findlay, Ohio, and we'll get on 23, and let's say I set my speed for 65, and we come up behind a car that is driving 55. The car, without me telling it what to do, will actually turn on the left turn signal, It notifies me that it's about to do something, but it says, it turns on left turn signal, it makes sure it's safe, it changes into the left lane, it passes that vehicle to get me up to speed that I want to go, and then once it's clear, it'll actually turn on the right turn signal and get back in the lane. Now, I think we have a video of this one that shows exactly what it did out on I-70. We just got in there, and you can see, as soon as I turn on this navigate on autopilot, it recognized that the vehicle in front of me was going 56, and I'm trying to go 71. So it changed lanes. It accelerated up to 70 because there's a car in front of us. Now it got to 71. So we got past the truck. You can see the visualization on the right. It knows where that truck is. It notified me that it's going to change. It shows me where it's going to go. And then it went there. That's navigate on autopilot. That's a part of it. Is it will get me to my destination. If it knows where I'm going, it'll try to get me there in the way that I want to get there. So like same speed, those kinds of things. So that was a big one, is navigate on autopilot, connecting those two things, because that lays the foundational parts of what I was talking about earlier, where I don't want to pay attention. I just want to set where I'm going and let the car get there. So this is foundational to that. The next one is Tesla Cam.
So how many of you have dash cams in your cars? They're becoming more and more popular, both in the case of to prevent fraud, to show proof of fault or lack of fault in an accident. So it was pretty cool when I got the test. I'm like, this thing has 8 cameras. This has got to be the best dash cam ever, but it didn't have one. It didn't have that functionality anyway. So I bought a third-party dash cam and I put it up in the window. But in the past year, Tesla has added that via software. They've added what they call the Tesla Cam, which is just dash cam functionality. And it records the front camera, and it records the 2 rear-facing side cameras. And like I said, you can catch accidents. Unfortunately, I didn't have the time, but I caught one on my way here yesterday of a hit and run on 161. But I do have a clip here of some of the weird stuff that you can catch on the highway. So here you'll see the front camera. And now you see what the side rear camera is recording. So it gives you a pretty good view all the way around of what happened or what may happen.
Was the change in the lane to go around that obstacle automatic, or did you?
That wasn't me. That was a clip that I found from another driver. I doubt that was automatic. There have been cases where the car, when on autopilot, has avoided other vehicles coming into its lane, but I don't think, as of now, it will avoid obstacle, like something like that it sees. I think it would drive right over it.
It would drive right over it.
Why you still pay attention?
Yes. One of the reasons, when you're looking for debris in the road, don't count on the car to avoid the debris. It's not going to do it. It does know about people. I would say at high speeds, it is probably going to impact a person. At low speeds, it'll probably avoid it.
Yeah, we haven't found anyone willing to test yet if it'll avoid.
Out in the parking lot, we can try later.
So an extension of the Tesla Cam functionality is what they call Sentry Mode. And basically, it uses the cameras and the sensors around the vehicle while you're not in it, while it's parked somewhere, as an enhanced security system. So if it detects a threat around the car, it'll kind of flash the lights and give a little warning. If it detects something more severe, like an impact or broken glass, it will sound an alarm. And the alarm, I guess this is a bit of Elon's personality is, Bach's Toccata and Fugue played on a loud guitar at maximum volume. I guess that's supposed to scare people away. So I've got a video here of Sentry Mode actually capturing a break-in, and you'll see actually captures the person's face. It captures their license plate when they're driving away. It obviously didn't prevent the break-in, but hopefully as this feature becomes more well-known, thieves will move on to kind of an easier target. So this is, you're seeing the side camera, and he breaks the back window here. And we're back to the front camera where he hops in his getaway car. So hopefully, with the license plate and the face, that's enough for the police to take care of the issue. Kind of related to my hobby of home automation and using electronics to facilitate my laziness. Anybody that can see this, do they know what it is? Besides a computer chip? This is a Raspberry Pi. It's basically an all-in-one computer. This costs $5. And you can install Linux on it. You can connect things to it. So these two features, the Sentry and the Tesla Cam, record to a USB thumb drive. But when you get home, you got to take the USB thumb drive into the house and copy stuff off, and that's a ton of work. So I took a Raspberry Pi.
It's a ton of work to take a USB drive out of a car, plug it into a computer, say copy files, and then take it back out and put it in the car. That's what he's talking about.
Too much work. Instead, I can use this. Presents itself as a thumb drive to the car. I plug it in the car, and I just leave it in there all the time. The cameras record to it just like it's any thumb drive. But when I get home and I pull into my garage and it detects my home network, it connects to that network, and it automatically uploads all of the camera recordings to a file server that I have at home. And I don't have to do anything.
Some of us do it the old-fashioned way. So enhanced summon. So last year I showed you what summon looks like, right? Summon is a feature of the car where you can, in a parking lot, if someone has parked too close to you and you can't safely get in the car without dinging up your doors or dinging their doors, you can open up your phone, hit the Tesla app, and you can summon the car and drive it backwards. You can drive it forwards, but essentially it's made for parking or unparking a vehicle, right? Very simple, basic moves, and it'll navigate around things like if you're parking it in your garage and there's something in the way, it'll try to avoid that. So very simple and basic. But as a beta tester, and this is the kind of thing, so most of the beta testing stuff I don't think is all that irritating to Josh. But I think this one was a little irksome because I got it. Okay, so I first got enhanced summon, and it had one feature, and that one feature was come to me, and that is I could open my phone, and as long as I was within 165 feet of my car, I could push the button, and the car would come to me wherever it was. All right, so that feature went away. I had it for about a month or 2 months, and played with it, and it was a lot of fun. And then I got an upgrade, and then I got another beta release, and it had enhanced summon, and it had not only come to me, but it had drive to target. And what drive to target is again, you have this circle with a 165-foot radius, and I could mark on the screen of my phone where I wanted the car to drive to, hold the button, and the car drives to that location. Doesn't drive to me, drives from one place to another, which we're going to show you a couple of videos. The first one is drive to target, I believe. Nope, first one's drive to me, come to me. So we recorded this. We just went to ODOT parking lot when there were no cars. And it's a little bit slow, right? I mean, this is early in the evolution of this functionality. So it is by itself figuring out the things that it has to navigate around. It has to figure out whether those lines have any value or meaning. It figures out that part right there is concrete and it's raised up, 6 inches from the rest of it. It makes the turn by it. So I'm not steering it. All I'm doing is holding down a single button and telling it to come to me. It has to choose the route. So you'll see here, it's not very big fan of making tight turns. So it actually has to back up to make this turn. which I find hilarious. You know,
A bit like
there's-
teaching your 8-year-old how to drive. I think.
yeah, it's so I'm still holding the button, and the car is just figuring it out, right? It's figuring it out by itself, feeling its way through the parking lot. It does not understand the stop sign. And so that's where I'm standing. I'm within 165 feet of it. And then it's done. So the car came to me, right? I suspect if I wouldn't have let off the button at that moment, that it would have actually backed up and come over closer. But that was enough of what we wanted to show you about what Come to Me was all about. So now we're going to show you Drive to Target. And for this, what I did was I opened up Drive to Target and I turned on the satellite map. And the satellite map looked at my present location and it overlaid what it knew was a satellite map of our parking lot. And so I chose a parking space. Now don't ask me why if you go straight across from a opening, it had to turn there. But I just chose a parking space over here in the row that it's getting ready to head toward and said, drive to that target. And what it did was it drove to that. Now, it didn't parallel park into the lot. It went to the target. But I'm standing there in front of the doors, the employee entrance at ODOT, and I'm just holding up. Huh?
Well, it seems to know that a lot of Tesla drivers like to take up more than one spot to protect it. So.
It decided that, well, you're a Tesla owner, you want to protect it, so we'll park in 4 parking spaces. Not just 2, 4. But it did it with me choosing a location, drive to here, and holding a button, and it calculated all the rest all by itself. So pretty cool stuff that we couldn't do last year. We did have Summon when we got them. Just right after we got them, Summon came out, but we didn't have these two. And unfortunately, fortunately and unfortunately, so there's a devil's advocate here, but I was upgraded to version 10 of the software on Sunday night. And so I go, and then I look at Summon and go, because all the extra Summon Come to Me and Drive to Target are gone. So that wasn't very much fun about it, but all right. So some other things that are safety related. We have some new features. One of them is lane departure avoidance and emergency lane departure avoidance. And so some of these work no matter what, and some of them work at your choice. You can turn off some of these features, but essentially what it does is, it tries to keep you in the lane. But for emergency lane departure, what it does is it tries to figure out what is your trajectory. And if you start sliding toward one lane or the other, and it sees an object into which you could collide, it will change the direction of the car. And it does it. I mean, I've done that before, right? If you just look down for a second and suddenly your car is very close to the line and there's a mailbox up ahead, that car is going to fix itself into the center of the lane and then really relinquish control back to you. So that feature you can't turn off. There are some other aspects of it that you can turn off. There's another one, auto steer stoplight warning. This is another one that we haven't really had an opportunity to see it because you pretty much have to be passing through a red light to see it. The importance of it, though, is what it's going to do is eventually it's going to recognize stop signs and red lights without the use of what are called SPAT messages. We talked about SPAT messages. SPAT messages, if you go to the city of Marysville right now, their traffic lights actually send out signal phase and timing messages. They just say, eastbound is red, eastbound is red, eastbound is red, eastbound and green, right? And it's telling you that stuff. What Tesla is doing is saying, we're not going to use that. We're going to try to detect whether or not there's a red light. And if there is, we're going to warn you right now, warning you that you're about to enter a red light. and eventually slow and stop you down. Right now, it won't stop the car at all. It just puts a warning up. And we did try to do a test unsuccessfully in the ODOT parking lot where there's no traffic light, and I will not say more. Obstacle-aware acceleration, the idea of obstacle-aware acceleration is really to prevent you from accelerating your vehicle into the back of another vehicle. That's what it's designed to do. The car, when the car is in auto steer, you can, even on a regular road, you can have it, you can be in auto steer mode even in town, and as long as there's a car in front of you that stops when it's supposed to stop, your car will stop when it's supposed to stop, partially, right? So if it's a red light, your car will come up behind it and will stop, and when it's green, that car will go again. But if you come up to a stop sign and stop, normally you don't go through stop signs 2 cars at a time. With this car, you would. If you didn't take control of the car is going to go the speed that you tell it to go in the direction that you want it to go until there's an object in front of it, right? So stop sign, the car in front of me stops my car. I don't have to worry about it. But if that car is not there, stopping at the stop sign, my car is going to go through. So that's one of the things that this type of these changes are going to make. And another one is that Tesla, I'm not sure if this is a good thing or a bad thing, leaving dogs in the car anyway, but there's dog mode. So the idea behind dog mode is so that you can set a climate inside your vehicle and it will keep it at approximately that temperature so that you could leave your dog in the car for a few minutes and not imperil the animal. Right? So it's going to say 70 degrees. It's not going to get to 150 degrees. It's going to stay comfortable in there so that the animal will not be overheated. And some of these controls, if you turn it on, some of the controls you can't really override. You have to leave it set there. The only one is, I think, how high within the range you can go. There's a certain range that you have to leave it in. But again, this is just another feature that was added to our vehicle, and this one is for animal safety. All right. Other things. So how many of you had your manufacturers give you more car last year? More car? Our cars got an upgrade. One of the things is that the peak power increase. So our cars actually got a 5% boost? A 5% boost last year. So that effectively changed the top speed of the cars from 155 miles an hour to 162 miles an hour.
Which we have not confirmed.
Well, you haven't confirmed it. No, we have not confirmed that one. We would like to have confirmed that one, but we haven't gone over to the TRC yet. That's why we're creating a partnership with the TRC. Don't think it's anything else. Don't think it has to do with ODOT, no. So we got a peak power improvement. We also got a range increase. Our battery, so we have the long range model. Our batteries were 310 was the range on these cars when we bought them. And right now, the range is approximately 325. So we didn't get a bigger gas tank. We didn't get a bigger battery. We got improvements in the performance of the vehicle. That's what we got. And we got faster supercharging. And I have a picture here to show you in just a minute, but essentially, just to give you an idea of charging on these cars, I can plug my car in, we can plug our cars in to the wall at one of these outlets and charge the car. Okay, it charges at about 5 miles an hour, between 4 and 5 miles an hour. That's how much charge the battery gets in an hour, 5 miles. So it's not very fast. But I have what's called a level 2 charger, and level 2 chargers, it kind of works on the same level of power in your house as a stove, an electric stove, or a dryer. Okay, so it takes 240 volts, and it charges at about 29 miles an hour. So that's a lot faster. Enter supercharger. Supercharger used to charge between 3 and 400, I think it was 3 and 4, between 3 and 400 until they made this change. And so what I want you to do is look at this. See the number in the middle? 601. This was, so they changed a little bit about the technology. And if you, on my phone, I can look for a supercharger. And if I select the supercharger in the phone app, and it navigates, so if I do that, if I choose it, then what it does is it instantly sends the directions for me to get to that supercharging station to my navigation system. All right, so that in and of itself is pretty cool, that it sets the map for how to get to that supercharger. But what it's doing is on the way to the supercharger, it starts to heat up the battery to get it to the optimal charging temperature, so that when I get there, I can get to charging. Actually, I think on this trip it was over 615 miles an hour at one point where it was charging. Their plans are to get that to 1,000 miles an hour of charge, which will be pretty fantastic because you shouldn't have to be at that charging station for more than probably 30 or 40 minutes. Right now it takes about an hour, and you want to leave. As soon as that car's finished charging, you want to get out of there. Because they charge for the space. So one more thing to look at in this picture. So at this point, I had passed the peak charging. But what I want you to know and notice is that right now, the number of miles that it says it has in terms of charge is 76 miles. Right? When it started, it had about 15. And what it says right below the rear tire there is plus 62 miles. And just below that, it says $1.50. How many of you can drive 62 miles with $1.50 worth of fuel? That's what this car does. So that just wanted to, from an economic perspective, it's pretty cool. All right, so that was safety stuff. Now we're going to move on to not safety stuff. All right, so Elon Musk has a pretty interesting sense of humor, right? Not everything about these cars is of the serious variety. So one of the big fun things is Tesla Atari. And Tesla Atari, I think there's 10, is it 10?
10 games. Yeah.
10 games in there now. And you can even connect a joystick. I think he got a game controller for years. So you got a game controller that you can plug in there and you can use that. You can't use these games while the car is out of park. So it's for when it's stationary only. But so Tesla Atari has lots of good games, and there's another game that was just recently added that we should have put the picture in of your driveway. Some buggy, the buggy one. You actually use the steering wheel and the brake when you're playing the game. Okay, so
I tried this for the first time on my concrete driveway, and you're turning the wheel, not a lot, but enough to leave some really nice rubber marks on the driveway, which I was thrilled about when I was done playing the game.
Yeah, he's got two little round marks.
So we have a clip of what that game looks like and someone playing it.
Ah, yeah.
But as someone who's done a road trip in a Tesla, and you have to stop and you have to charge, a lot of times I spent my free time on Twitter, which I think we can all agree is probably a bad way to spend your time. This, on the other hand, I think this would actually, oh dear.
Confusion cloud.
Oh, that confusion.
You can see him turning the steering wheel.
Now, if you look up above the screen, it's telling me like how I'm driving incorrectly. It's telling me too much left, too much right. All right, let's hit the brakes. Oh. And you're not using the accelerator on this game because, safety. Instead, you're just using the brake. And I probably should use the brake more.
So that's a fun part. There's a new game that just came out in version 10. There's another game. I haven't played it yet. Cuphead, yes. All right, so yeah, that was Beach Buggy 2 racing. So the next fun thing, could be lots of fun, is that Elon Musk in his infinite wisdom agreed to allow romance mode to occur in the car. And so you enter romance mode, and here's what happens. All right, but it's not just that, because the heater just came on, and it's blowing warm air into the room. You just touch the screen, and romantic music starts playing, and it's not always Marvin Gaye, it's just some romantic music. All right, so you and your loved one can sit in the Tesla, and yeah. All right, so in contrast to that, we have one more that I want to show you, and it's called emission testing, I believe is what it's called. Now, if any of you understand a Tesla and how a Tesla is made, there are no emissions. All right, so we were curious about this, and I figured out what it was, and I showed my son, who at the time was 17 years old. I showed it to him, and I said, listen, we're going out to dinner tonight with your mother, and I'm going to introduce this. You need to help. And so we did that. We got in the car, and we started going down the road, and then we engaged emission testing.
So it's nice that he gives you a variety of options.
Yeah. Yeah, there's like 8 different, I think it's like the zipper
And you can position the sound to come from any of the seats in the car. And the screen can be hidden so that you can trigger it with one of the stalks,
Yes.
and no one knows that you're
Yeah, so I set it for the seat that I knew my wife was going to sit in. And I set it, I closed that window, and it's the left button that you choose. And so we were driving down the road, and I did it, and it did a really good one. I don't remember what it was, but it was effective. Because my wife looks at me and goes, I didn't do that. And my son instantly pipes up and says, well, it sure sounded like it was you. And then I did it again, and she goes, I did not do that. And then we couldn't hold it back anymore. But and I think you did something like that with your sons too, didn't you?
My son actually pranked me. He was in the car before I was, and you can set the sound up that anytime you activate a turn signal. So we had been driving down the road for a while, and then I went to make a left turn and was surprised.
Yeah. So lots of fun in these cars.
So let's talk a little bit about what we know and think is coming for our cars in the future. Obviously, one of Tesla's biggest focuses is autonomous driving. And what you see here is what they call their Autopilot 3.0 hardware, or what Elon is calling the full self-driving computer. Now, our cars currently have the Autopilot 2.5 hardware. But because we bought the full self-driving option, we will get this as a retrofit sometime this fall. And they've actually, I believe, started retrofitting the Model S and Model X cars in the past few weeks. But what's interesting about this computer is it's the first one that has Tesla's in-house designed chip processor. And they designed it to be able to handle the massive amount of data that it gets from 8 cameras and 12 ultrasonic sensors and GPS and maps in order to make the decisions that it has to make in real time. And a very important piece of those chips are what they call the neural network accelerators. So neural networks are kind of the magic sauce that Tesla uses for all its vision processing and autonomy. And these neural network accelerators can process 72 trillion operations every second, which is astonishing. To give you an idea, of why that might be needed. I'll show you a little video here of what autopilot sees when it's going down the road and making decisions. And then I'll explain a little bit. It's actually not everything that it sees and takes into account. So what we're seeing here, we're behind a fire truck, and we've got lots of cars around us, and you'll notice that all of the objects have bounding boxes around them. What I'm sure you can't see is that those bounding boxes have text with them describing what the object is. Is it a car, a truck, a van, a person, a bicycle, a motorcycle? It's identifying those things. It identifies whether those objects are stationary or moving, what their velocity is. You can see the green area is what the computer has decided is what it calls drivable space. So all of that is viable for driving in. There's a yellow or an orange stripe down the middle, and that is what is called predicted or projected path. That's where the car thinks that it needs to go to get where it's going or where you've told it to go. So it's an insane amount of information, and it's being processed in real time. And by the way, it's also happening with 6 other cameras. So you're going to get a sense. And not only is this what it's seeing, we also know that it sees stoplights and stop signs and for the lights, what condition they're in. We know that it sees painted stop lines, so it knows where to stop at an intersection. So it's an amazing amount of information and needs to be processed at real time. So, as cool as all this is, just like any other car maker, Tesla has some things that they need to improve on, especially if they're going to get to their goal of fully autonomous driving. One of the things is interpreting lane markings. In the real world, we know that the lane markings can be in poor condition, can even be missing, and Charles has a good case of that. We have a clip. Tesla doesn't rely entirely on lane markings. You saw all the things that it's using to create its predicted path, but lane markings are important. And I think we have a clip here. This is 315 South, and this is a really nice new paved stretch of road.
See those little dotted lines on the right? Just pay attention to those. So right now I'm in the middle lane, but then there was an exit. All right, on that particular stretch, there are 3 exits. They're all in a row, one right after another. So it's like 670 exit, and then it's Goodale, and then it's 33. All right. When this road was repaved, see the big broad white lines coming together there? Those weren't there. The way the car is really dependent on those lines. For each one of those exits, when this was freshly paved, the only line that was there was that line on the left, the dashed line on the left. The lines on the right were gone. So you want to know what happened to my car that morning? Because I only did this once. We're driving down. The lanes split from a 3-lane road into 2 2-lane roads, and my car headed straight for the middle. See that sign straight ahead? It headed for all 3 of those. So the first time,
Trying to center in the big lane.
it's centered in the big lane. So the white line that it was centering on went wide right? It went away. And so my car said, oh, got to go to the middle of those 2 lanes. That's really what it's designed to do. Right now it's to stay in the middle of 2 lines. So the middle of 2 lines was a barrier. So I took control, I put it in autopilot, and then Goodale Avenue, and it did the same thing, and then I took control, and then I did it for for 33, and it did the same thing. It just went into the middle. So in each case, it would have headed straight for the barrier, because those little dashed lines on an exit were not there, and they weren't there for several weeks. So I couldn't use autopilot. And another example was so this one's a good example too. So this one is driving 23 south. Look at the left. Notice how that exit did not have any line. Now, you couldn't detect it, but if I were to show you the right-hand rear camera, what you would see is that the car moved over 2 feet and then came back. 2 feet. Okay, it moved 2 feet to the left because, again, it followed that left line. It followed it and tried to get in between the dotted line and the solid line to stay in the middle. And then one other example that we don't have an image of was this last winter. They were doing some road construction on 315 South at the hospital curve. All you familiar with the hospital curve? Yeah, it's a wonderful place. So they were doing some construction, and they did two things. One is that they put down that tape, the white tape kind of stripes in the middle. It's a 3-lane roadway there, and the middle 2 were solid stripes all the way through because you're not supposed to change lanes there, right? It's under construction. Well, one weekend, those white lines disappeared. I mean, they were gone. So I don't know if there was a collision and they ended up ripping that up. I don't know, and my car doesn't know. But what my car knows is that it was driving into the intersection following, because I was in the middle lane in this scenario. I was in the middle lane. There was 2 white lines until about a third of the way into the curve, and then no white lines. And my car goes, doot doot, I'm out. I had control. It simply said, I don't know what to do. You're on a 3-lane road, and right now you're in a 1-lane road, and it's a really wide one. And so it didn't know what to do. And so it basically dropped out of autopilot mode and said, you have to drive now. So that was exciting. Yeah.
Another issue that Tesla owners are kind of familiar with, and this has gotten better over the years, but it's still too common, is what they call phantom braking. As you've seen, it uses all these sensors and cameras to interpret the environment around it. But sometimes it makes a mistake. It's pretty common for it to mistake a very strong shadow or an overhead sign to be on the roadway in front of it. So all of a sudden it's traveling down the highway at 65 miles an hour, and there's a sign in front of it, and it does what it thinks it should do, which is hit the brakes. And it's certainly jarring for people in the car, but if someone's tailgating me, they get a pretty rude awakening too. So that's something that definitely needs an improvement. And we think another opportunity for Tesla is kind of personalized learning. The way Tesla improves its neural networks and learns about different situations is the cars are always gathering image data, anonymized, but it gets fed back to Tesla, and then Tesla can use things that it sees in that image data to train the neural networks and teach them about new situations. The new neural networks are created and then deployed to the car through an update. So it's not a real-time learning, and it doesn't have anything to do with our driving styles or where we may go. But we think that's a really good opportunity. If it learned that every morning at 6 o'clock I am driving down 315, it knew things about me, how I drive, or Charles, there's an opportunity there to make the car perform better. And it'd also be a huge kind of advantage over other car makers as well. So, in summary, I hope you agree that the stuff that has happened to our cars in the past year is pretty amazing, especially the fact that it can all be done over the air, and we kind of hope that this is taken up by all the other car makers as well. We think it will. That's it.
That's what we have.
Questions?
Yes? I can honestly tell you that if I drove it in snow, I was driving. And for this last winter, I decided that I wasn't going to drive my car in the snow, so I drove my truck. But Josh...
I didn't baby mine, so I did drive it in the snow. I actually...
You mean protect?
Right, that's what I meant. So I actually was coming back from Marysville one evening, and it was kind of a surprise snowstorm. So we're coming down 33, and I had it on autopilot. It was driving, and the snow started picking up pretty hard. And I thought, well, I'm just going to see how long this works. You know, I was ready to take control of the car. I was really surprised how well it continued to maintain lanes, even when I wasn't sure I could see where the lines were. It did a pretty good job. Now, eventually, when the roads were completely snow-covered, it didn't have any idea where the lanes were, but it did a pretty decent job.
The rain causes some confusion too. When you're an autopilot and you tell it to change lanes and it's a heavy downpour, it sometimes takes 4 attempts. Not me. I'm just going to tell it to change lanes. But my car has started and then gets spooked, and then started back again spooked, and so it has taken me as many as 4 attempts for the car to actually get into the next lane. Then that's with no one in the right lane. No one close. It just has trouble when there's heavy rain figuring out exactly what to do about that line. It's trying to figure out if there's an object there.
Have you ever had like when there's brine, the brine down, the roads are really white, they're not snow covered, they're white, does that affect you on the pilot any?
I haven't had any problems in that situation. My route is down 315 to work, so I was going through it all last winter, and it seemed to detect the lanes just fine.
When the white roads get
Yeah.
whited out?
Yep.
Yeah. The only issues I had were like if they were completely snow covered, but the salt, the whiteness, I didn't have any problem with.
When you do need to take control, is that instantaneous? Oh, okay. And if you are driving without autopilot and there is an object in the road or to the side, is there any indication that there is something there as a benefit to you?
Yeah, so there are a couple of things there. The question was, if we're not on autopilot and there's something in the road in the front or the side, is there any indication? It will take kind of avoidance maneuvers. If a car does come into your lane and it's got a free place, a safe place to go, it will move. It will get you out of the way, even if it's not on autopilot. As far as, I don't think it will do that for an object other than a vehicle, but it does, on the display, it does give you indication of objects around the car, and by the color, kind of gives you an indication of how close they are. Sometimes if you're on a road with a close guardrail, you can see on the display it's lighting up yellow and red on the side of the car. It knows something is there and it's pretty close.
It can also just detect construction zones, so it's aware when you drive into a construction zone, it knows that it's in a construction area. And I think I've had it limit my speed in the construction zone before to some degree. It's a limited function. Oh, I know. It limited functionality of lane change. When I went into a construction zone, it wouldn't do auto lane change. That's what it was.
How about the slow down and move over? Is there anything in the future to assist with that?
You would hope, or you would expect that that is a case they're going to have to deal with. It certainly doesn't do it now.
Yep. Yes?
Can your wives drive your toys?
What?
There are different profiles.
The question was, when our wives drive our toys, is there a different profile? And yes, I don't know what the limit is, but you can add multiple profiles. And it it doesn't just record the seat and mirrors, it records their preferences for the options as well. So yeah.
Have you let your wives drive your toys?
I have, yeah. Has Charles? No? Okay. I guess that answers that.
You will have an opportunity if you stay tonight. My wife is going to be here, and you can ask her just how overjoyed she would be to drive that vehicle.
Chris?
If your car does something that you didn't plan on, like for instance, driving towards the middle or median or like over the line, at least see you do that. You assume responsibility for the car going over the center line
Yeah.
or whatever that.
By law, you're still responsible for the control of that automobile, so yeah.
Yeah, technically, you're not supposed to text and drive either, but, you know, it's completely possible to eat with two hands in an autopilot mode. Louis?
Is there a two-door model? Not currently in production. So the very first car they made was the Roadster, and it was a two-door. They have a new, I think it's just called the new Roadster, that is expected out in the next couple of years. But start saving your pennies. I think it starts at $250,000.
Yeah, I think the deposit on that one, and just to contrast it, our deposit before we could order was $1,000. The deposit to buy the new Roadster is $50,000. That's the deposit. No, it's probably worth it though, because I think the car moves from 0 to 60 in 2.5 seconds.
1.8 seconds.
1.8 seconds. And I believe that it has a range of over 600 miles on a charge. Ours is 325, that one's over 600. That's a pretty incredible car there.
Balloon?
I heard Tim ask you, but I didn't hear your answer. Did you notice a significant increase in your electric bill?
Yeah, so the question is, did I notice a big increase in my electric bill? I drove right at 12,000 miles. I tracked it over a year, and my electric bill went up just over $600. So that's certainly a couple thousand less than I would have spent in gas. And we've actually found, our other car is an SUV, which we're used to taking when we take the family on trips. And it's a gas hog. We've actually found ourselves taking the Tesla. We can fit everything we need into it. So the other car gets driven a lot less, and so we're even saving more because of that.
What about your car insurance?
My insurance, so I had a 12-year-old Acura before. So I went from that to the Tesla, and I think my insurance went up like maybe $20 a month. It might not even been that much. There wasn't much of a difference. Now I know that varies across the country. Some people have said they were shocked when they got their Model 3 and they got the bill. But here at least, I haven't.
Mine went up, but it was not terrible at all. It wasn't very much.
Josh, did you say yours was electric bill went up $600 a year?
A year.
Yeah. So I spent $600 that I attributed directly to the electric car.
Yeah, and it's more in the wintertime than in the summertime. The consumption of electricity by the car can be as much as 50%. So you charge it to 300 miles, you're probably going to get 150 miles out of it if the weather is below 20 degrees. It's going to kill it.
So when are we getting these for our IT departments?
For the IT departments?
Yeah.
Well, I've been working on that, but I can't even get them to install permanent charging stations yet, so getting the cars. But actually, I think that there are some plans. My recommendation to you is, if there is an opportunity to ask questions of the director tomorrow, who believes that technology is the future of the Department of Transportation, ask him when we get our fleet of Teslas so that we can test them out, because I know we have more testing to do. There's just no doubt about it.
Reduce road accidents
Well, yeah.
and issues that would drive down our insurance.
Be careful about that slippery slope, because then he's going to ask about your driving record.
And I don't know if anybody saw the article. I don't know if anybody saw the article over the summer. Yellow Cab in town purchased a fleet of 50 Model 3s. So they obviously see the value and the savings.
Yeah, it's going to make a huge difference.
In the back?
You said it goes when it's in a work zone. How does it react coming into a facility? No striping, where it's just cones or drums? Does it go all the way up to the first drum in the roadway before it starts?
It depends on how well they do that. So, because I have some recordings of that. I go to Findlay, Ohio about once a month, and there's some construction both north and south on 23 or 15, one of those two segments. So on the northbound side, when I go up there, the barrels are they close the right lane, so they move you to the left lane, and they put the barrels on the other side of the white line. My car had absolutely no trouble going through that construction zone at whatever the posted speed was and keeping track of whatever the vehicle was in front of me. On the southbound side, they did it differently. What they did is they closed the left lane and they put the barrels on the inside, that is in my lane, so that you couldn't see the white lines. My car had some trouble with that. Because there was no line on the right side and it couldn't see the lines on the left side, it was moving a little bit unnervingly, let's say. And there was a barrel that was kind of sticking out in the lane, and I thought it was going to hit it. So I took control, and I didn't do auto steer anymore in that zone.
All right, so we've gone over our time. Any other questions? Come find us. We'll be happy to answer them.
Yes. Thanks.